In this tutorial, I'm going to go over how I made my ruffle collar for my Snow White costume. The fabric I chose for my collar is just a basic floral lace pattern, and I got 1¼ yards. I got it at a remnant section, so that's what I had to choose from, and that's why I got it. The front sections of the collar taper downward, you can see that on my pattern, and then the middle section I am just drawing out here as a straight rectangle. And I just sewed those 3 pieces together. Now I wanted this collar to be really full and really flouncy with a lot of fabric, so what I ended up doing first was pleating the collar in about 1-inch sections, running that through the machine, and then gathering that pleated collar into the right size of the neck of my bodice. So for the first 3 or 4 pleats, I pinned them into place, but I found out this collar was so huge that was going to take so much time, so I ended up just pleating it in my machine. And I also knew the pleats didn't have to be perfect because I was going to end up gathering them in the end anyway. So here is the entire collar pleated out. So then I ran it back through the machine and just gathered it slightly to make it fit the neckline of my bodice. And this is going to vary depending on the style of your bodice, so you might need a lot of gathering or very little. Once that is done, it is time to stiffen the collar to make it stand up. To do this, I first clipped the entire collar on a set of hangers, just so when I hung them over the sink, they would be perfectly vertical and end up drying straight. For my stiffener, I ended up using the Mod Podge brand, but that's only because that's the only thing I could find in my Joann's at the time. Any brand of liquid stiffener should work. I put the stiffener in a large bowl and then dipped my collar into it over a sink, and I ended up also using my hands and just trying to spread the stiffener and soak the collar fabric as thoroughly as I can. If any part of this collar doesn't have stiffener on it, it's going to be droopy and it's not going to stand up right. This entire thing has to be soaked. Once you're done, you need to let it dry like this without touching it so it will retain its shape. So I actually found out that just the stiffener alone wasn't enough to hold the collar up, so I needed to make some sort of frame. To make the frame, I just used some crafting wire. I don't know what gauge this wire is, I just had it lying around, but I knew it was going to be strong enough to be able to hold up my collar just by testing it and leaning the fabric against it. So yeah, just make sure your wire is strong enough to hold its position. And you can see I did lots of spikes going vertical, and I did lots of horizontal stripes, weaving them in between, all to keep its shape. This will take you a long time. Just keep adding wire until you can get it to keep its shape. To further help it keep its shape and to make it look better than just wrapped spiderweb wire, I covered the entire thing in white electrical tape. Again, this process took forever. So put on a good movie, or pick out a good few movies, and be honest with you guys, this collar was so frustrating to make. Like, I sat down and cried a few times on separate occasions because things just weren't working. But eventually I got it all to work with the stiffener and the wire and securing it to my bodice. So I got it to work. It was just so difficult to get there. But you can do it. I did it, and I'm showing you how to do it, so it's gonna work. Alright, so once you're happy with your wire frame and you've kind of sat it on your shoulders and made sure that it holds the shape you want and it's strong enough, we're going to go ahead and attach the lace collar to the wire frame. To do that, I just hand stitched the bottom of the collar onto the bottom of the wire frame, and it is going to be kind of hard to sew because you have so much stiffener in the lace, but you can do it, just take your time. Once the frame and the collar were one piece, I held it up to myself and onto my costume, and then cut the lace down into the right size and shape. Now the edge of this collar is going to be really pokey because the lace has so much starch in it, it's like a brick. It's solid, it won't move. So I got a piece of felt bias tape pre-bought at Joann's, and I just hand stitched this around the edge of the collar so it's not going to poke and irritate my skin. To finish off the collar, I hand glued hundreds of little rhinestones around it. I personally chose to concentrate the rhinestones at the base and have them feather out towards the top. Of course, this step is totally optional and you can do it in any way you want. And that concludes how I built the collar itself. No longer have this bodice with the collar that looks this way, so I'm gonna best describe to you how I attach the collar to this bodice. So I essentially tied 4 white little ribbons onto the collar, and then I put 4 little loops of ribbon into my bodice. So that way I would just take the ribbon on the collar and thread it through the loop on the bodice and then tie it in a pretty little bow, and that's how the collar stayed attached to the bodice. So that's it for the tutorial on this Elizabethan Snow White collar. It was a pain in the butt. I hated making every single step of the way, but it turned out looking really pretty and I absolutely love it. And I think the final product turned out amazing. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notifications for the next time I post a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!